Hey YouTube, welcome to Ray of All Trades. Today we're going to work on a couple of ATVs, Chinese ATVs, 125cc variety. Got a pink one and a green one. One of them's a no start, the other one's a no stop. So we're going to work on the no start one first and come along for the diagnosis. I'll show you what I find. First thing I like to do is start off with verifying the problem. So turn the key on. Nice bright blue light. It is in neutral, and make sure that the run position is in the on position. These do have a safety, so you do have to squeeze the brake and verify that that it'll crank over. So basically, if I hit the start button right now without squeezing the brake, nothing should happen. So now I'm going to try to step on the foot brake and then push the lever, and they are right. So this definitely hasn't started. I've already started diagnosing on this machine, and I picked up the video halfway through, but I'll talk you through exactly what I found so far. The battery's got good voltage. I did pull the spark plug and verify that I had spark. So the way you would do that, pull off the spark plug boot. I believe this was a 5/8 plug. Pull out the plug, have it inside the spark plug boot, set it down and crank while you're watching, and you're looking for spark to occur. So I can show you that in another video, but all you're doing is verifying spark. The way these machines shut off, because they do have controller boxes on them for safety, is they remove the ignition wire. So basically they ground out the ignition, force it not to spark. That's the way they shut them off. So they don't control fuel. You can probably already see that I've pulled the carburetor off. And like I said, I've already been working on this machine so far. And I pulled out the fuel line first off of the carburetor and verified that I had decent fuel flow, and take a look at what the original fuel coming out of here would have been. And the fuel was old. I'm guessing that it had some of that ethanol in it, and likely is what caused the problem. So I pulled off the carburetor, planned on rebuilding it, and these carburetors have Phillips head screws that would have been in there. They grind off the heads of them so that you can't pull the fuel bowl. So I've had luck previously putting a cutoff tool on the heads of the screws and cutting flat heads into them. These, even after doing that, they were still stuck. So I made a decision to basically abandon this. The carburetors, brand new off of one of the online superstores, goes for about 15 bucks. So very likely I could have drilled and tapped and pulled these screws out, or even cut them and then put a bolt and a nut on there to fasten it back together. But realistically, as cheap as it was, I was willing to abandon the idea. So the fuel that came out of this carburetor after I had it out and was getting ready to disassemble it, the fuel that came out of that carburetor was it was pungent. It smelled bad, so you could tell it was definitely old. Oddly enough, this machine was running, according to the end user, probably about 4 months ago. So it doesn't take long for that ethanol to really screw stuff up. So I ordered a carburetor, and I'll show you that here in just a second. We'll go ahead and get that installed and see what we get. So for this towel motor Chinese ATV, pulled off the carburetor, and I matched it up the best I could with one of the carburetors off of the big box online stores. And the part that seemed to match up the closest was, well, you can see that, of course, made in China, just like the ATV, right? At the end of the day, it's a carburetor, right? Fuel in, air and fuel in, and air fuel mixture out. So, but what you're after is to make sure that everything lines up the same, the best as possible. Let me see, they gave me a spark plug, probably guaranteed to never fire. New gaskets with it. A new air filter that definitely will not be using because it is nowhere close to the original one that was on there. It would work in a pinch, and of course if I had to use it I would, but no reason to. So, new fuel filter. Yeah, that'll probably get used. So, fuel filter would not have fixed this problem. The ethanol and the fuel separated while it was inside the bowl over the winter and forms and basically gunks up inside this float bowl and stops the needle and the jet from working properly. And so the jet is what allows the fuel to come up into the carburetor and meters the amount of fuel that's being pushed into the center of the carburetor for burning. So the float bowl, though, is what allows a certain level of fuel, and it's right about there if you can tell. So there is a needle and a seat that is stopping the fuel that comes into here from filling up and overflowing. So it allows a certain amount of fuel to come in. The float, as the name says, lifts up and closes that needle valve and stops the flow of fuel, so that it always has roughly 75% of the capacity of the bowl. So this does have a manual choke, and for those that would have said, hey, make sure the choke's on when I was trying to start, yeah, the carburetor was already off. So, but I did try that before starting all this process. Oddly enough, the replacement carburetor, the screws have not been cut off. You can see you can take these apart later on. This port right here is for draining out any fuel. So you would loosen up this screw right here, allows anything that's left inside the bowl to drain out of this tube, which goes to here and usually fits, drains to underneath the bike somewhere. Ideally, what you're trying to measure when you're ordering these carburetors is the diameter of the air inlet and the diameter of the fuel and air mixture inlet. So you want these two holes to match up, and you want this diameter to be proper. So it comes with a new gasket. This is a sealing gasket. Keeps it from pulling in a lean mixture, which would make the bike run faster. So if you have a bike that the idle speed increases and decreases rapidly and you just can't get a handle on it, there's a pretty good chance that this gasket is leaking, these bolt holes are loose, or something else on the intake. And I think you can see it right down about here at the bottom of the intake. That gasket there would be leaking too. So air leaks cause the mixture to change. So instead of the 14.7 to 1 mixture it's supposed to have, it will change that mixture, and it'll be either too much, usually too much air on a leak like that. It can be argued both ways. Some people say that it depends on where the vacuum leak is. It can actually make it run rich, but it's got too much air coming into it and not enough fuel. So, and I don't know if anybody who's ever run a chainsaw can attest to, when you start running out of fuel right at the very end of the tank, it'll pick up speed. It'll start revving up a little bit higher, and that's because you changed the mixture. So anyway, let's get this installed and see if this fixes the problem. Okay, I'm going to do my best to describe how to change this out. So this throttle cable attachment at the top is not in bad shape, but you'll see when I take this apart how easy it would be to continue on replacing everything. But that needle that actually goes down into the carburetor itself to monitor the amount of fuel, or to regulate the amount of fuel coming through that carburetor, is pretty gunked up. It's got a lot of stuff on it. So we're going to be using part of the new carburetor to swap that out, but there's really no reason to pull this the threads off of here as long as they all line up. Let's go ahead and pull this apart. This is spring loaded in here, so you're going to have to keep control of it as you unscrew it. What we're trying to do is get this metering valve out. We could reuse the spring if we chose to, or the other spring that comes with the carburetor is also new, but these bikes really aren't that old. It just happens to be that the fuel did this one in. So anyhow, So grab a hold of this top ring, grab the carburetor with the other hand, unscrew it, keeping in mind that, like I said, it's spring loaded, so keep your hand on it. Alright, let's go ahead and unscrew that. It's spring loaded. It actually took me a couple of takes because the first time I pulled it apart, it actually flew apart on me. So set this aside. Inside the body of the carburetor is that black metering valve that you see here. It's down inside here, so use a pick and grab it and pull it out. Pretty easy, right? So I was wrong. What you notice, this one has a groove on one side. Hopefully that's in focus. And then just a smaller groove on the opposite side. That does go in there one way. So on the side of this body in the carburetor, there's something that sticks out on that side, and then at the bottom of this side is something that sticks out. So obviously this goes in one way. So set that carburetor aside, out of the dirt, and set down the metering valve. Then we're going to, it takes two hands here, we're going to compress this spring and pull out that cable through that long groove that you saw. So it comes out that side, right? And just pull this out the way. Grab this is where, if you decided you wanted to change out this top of the carburetor and or the spring, this is now the time you would do it. So you could at that point just pull this completely off and leave the cable. So there's really no reason on this one. Like I said, it's so new to do that. And that's just the mechanical aspect of it. Everything on this throttle works very smooth. So drop this, the end of the cable into that hole, pull it towards you, and I'm holding back the spring with my thumb. Keep pulling it back till it slides into the groove, and then drop the spring down inside the place like that. So brand new metering valve, spring's intact, nothing has come apart up top right here. Just verifying all the simple stuff. So then we're going to grab the body of the carburetor. Like I mentioned, inside the carburetor is one groove that is going to force you to line this thing up properly. So you should be able to see it inside the mouth of the carburetor. You can see that metering valve go down and land right into that other groove, right into the main jet, the top of the main jet. So then I pull back the ring, set the top of the carburetor. Again, you can see the keyway here. So it is set, well, it'll only allow it to go on the top of that carburetor one way. And if I was smart, I would have looked at it before I did that. So again, it takes two hands. Get that top of the carburetor on till it sits flush. Hold tension on it. Then you're going to have to take that locking ring and thread it. So almost one of those scenarios where it'd be nice to have three hands, but I don't know where you'd put them. So I'm holding tension on it to hold the spring compressed, and I'm very gingerly making sure that the threads line up properly. Turn it backwards until it drops flat. And tighten it up, hand tight. So, hand tight is enough. There's no reason to put a tool on that thing. There's a flat mating surface, and I want to say there was also a gasket in there that kind of locks out any kind of dirt and what have you. But this valve should at that point move when I grab the throttle, and you should see it move up and down. So this one they've got turned down so that it only has a little bit of throttle. It's a youngster that's riding it, so you can see it only opens up about a quarter of the way because they've lock down the throttle to only open a smaller amount. So I can show you that at the end of the video. So on to mounting the carburetor onto the intake manifold. So this carburetor has an offset. You can kind of see it in the picture. It's not perfectly centered in the middle. So you just match that up to the intake manifold, and you make sure that the O-ring meets the metal surface, and then the O-ring on the carburetor meets the flat surface. So obviously there should be an O-ring on both sides. That's going to seal it up. Again, you don't want any vacuum leaks. So check the integrity of your O-rings. Make sure it's in good shape. Start one side, then take a visual inspection, make sure that the other side is in alignment, and it's not. So just adjust it until it is in alignment. And again, another 10mm bolt threads through. Keep it in mind, these bolts are steel and the carburetors are aluminum, so a little bit tougher. I'm trying to leave room for the camera so you guys can see, and unfortunately I can't. But I think we've got it there. So again, 10mm bolts. We're just going to tighten those up. Not super tight, because like I said, that aluminum will strip. So, and the best way I found to not over tighten these things is to use really small wrenches, so that we don't get a whole lot of torque. But it helps if I grab the right size wrench. Like I said, it's a 10mm, but with my glasses on, believe it or not, I actually couldn't see it. So, 10mm wrench. Pressure's on because you guys are watching. So, a lot of people will use Loctite on these. If you're going to do that, I'd recommend the blue Loctite. Keep them from vibrating loose. As many times as these carburetors fail and you're pulling them off, I don't know that you'll ever run into any kind of a problem. So I've done a lot of these carburetors and none of them have vibrated loose yet, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time. So just snug it on down. Most of these carburetors are pretty well adjusted out of the box too. So some of them don't have adjustments, some of them do. But even the ones that do have adjustments, I haven't had to do more than about 1/8 of a turn. So adjusting the idle speed on them. As far as the main jet, they're already set. So this one's got a much better air filter than the other one. It's an encased air filter with the regular pipe clamp, hose clamp on it. So, and I may have done myself in by mounting the carburetor before I push this back into place into that hole. We're about to find out. Oh, alright, it made it. Lucky me. Put the air box back on with the air filter. Flathead screwdriver. Snug it on down. Take my overflow hose, run it through the clamp on this side of the bike. Give me just a second and I'll show you guys what I'm doing. Tight quarters for a fat guy. Alright. I haven't decided if I want to change that fuel filter because it's in really clean condition. It just happened to be the fuel that sat in that bowl over the winter that separated. So the ethanol and the fuel will separate. You got 10%, at least where we live, you got 10% ethanol combination, and the fuel will separate when you dump all this out and put it into a glass jar. You can actually see the ball of water rolling around separately or independently. So let me get this fuel line connected on here. Sorry, I'm not trying to hold the camera and do this at the same time, so I apologize if I'm bouncing around a whole lot. There we go. They don't have great retention strength on them. It is gravity. That's why I'm not as concerned about these clamps. If it was a pressurized system, a fuel pump or something like that, I would definitely be putting a regular hose clamp on this thing. So now we want to open up the fuel valve and see if we have any leaks. So it has happened before when they ship these things completely dry. Let me get you guys back in focus, I'm sorry. It has happened before that when these things ship, that needle and seat attached to the float will be stuck in one position. And when you turn on the fuel, it'll just start running all over the place. So it takes a little bit of time, you know, about 10 seconds or so, and you'll start seeing fuel come pouring out of the thing. But if everything's working like it's supposed to, and that needle and seat and float are all functioning properly, it'll fill up that bowl with fuel, and that float, the choke will rise, and it'll shut off the fuel flow. So I don't see any fuel running out of this thing. And then I talked about a hose earlier. So that's this hose right here. Runs down and it goes through a clamp right about there. Right about there. And it just keeps that hose aimed to the bottom of the bike. So that screw I showed you on the other side of the carburetor, when you open that up, it'll run out this tube and fall down to the ground. Ideally, if you can, put something there to catch that. So, because whatever is on top of, especially if it's live, will probably die because of the fuel. So, well, let's go ahead and finish this thing up. Get the spark plug boot back on. It should lock in. And like I said, the first time I checked it, I did have a really good spark. So I'm fairly confident that the kill switch, ignition switch, and then the safety overrides are all working properly. So all in all, the bike's in really good condition. Everything I've seen about it could use a little bit of a bath, but considering that really young youngsters are riding these things, they're really taking good care of these things. So anyway, moment of truth. Let's see. So choke's on. Pretty warm out here too, so I'd be surprised. It might have to go half choke. Anyway, fuel is on. Run switch is in the on position. Turn the key on. I'm in neutral. Let's go ahead and see if it'll fire up. Oh, I also have to step on that emergency brake. I feel like a giant sitting on this thing. Well, how do you like that? No smoke, purring like a kitten. Let's see. Let's take that choke off. Slowly. Yep, choke's all the way off. Works like it's supposed to. Just make sure it still goes in gear and I didn't knock anything off. Let's see. Well, there's drive, neutral, reverse. All right. Seems to work pretty good. Key switch shuts it off like it's supposed to. Oh well, I'm impressed. New carburetor fixes them again. Love these Chinese quads. Stay tuned to episode 2 where I'm going to be fixing the rear brakes on that one. That won't stop. It runs great, but it won't stop. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. If you liked it and liked the video and got something out of it, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. It helps the channel. Doesn't cost you guys a dime. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching.